For a very long time, humans like us were not the only humans on Earth. Imagine a world where several different human species walked the land, hunted animals, and raised their families. Among these ancient relatives were the Neanderthals. They lived across Europe and parts of Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. Their time on this planet stretched from about 400,000 years ago until roughly 40,000 years ago. This means they were around for a much longer period than modern humans have existed so far. They were true survivors, adapted to harsh Ice Age climates and challenging environments, a testament to their resilience and capabilities as a species. Neanderthals were not just primitive cavemen, as they were once depicted in popular imagination. They were physically distinct from us, often shorter and stockier with robust builds. This body shape was likely an adaptation to the cold climates they inhabited, helping them conserve heat more effectively. They had large, prominent noses which might have helped warm and humidify the cold, dry air they breathed. Their skulls were also different, longer and lower than ours, with a receding forehead and a distinct bulge at the back called an occipital bun. Despite these differences, their brain size was on average as large as ours, or even slightly larger, suggesting considerable cognitive abilities. The first Neanderthal fossils were discovered in the Neander Valley in Germany in the mid-19th century. These discoveries initially puzzled scientists. Some thought they were the remains of diseased or deformed modern humans. However, as more fossils were found across Europe and Asia, it became clear that these were a distinct type of human, an ancient cousin who had long since vanished. Understanding who they were, how they lived, and what happened to them became a fascinating and important area of scientific inquiry. These early findings opened a window into a past where our own species was not alone, prompting us to reconsider our place in the grand story of human evolution and diversity. For many years, the popular image of Neanderthals was that of brutish, unintelligent beings. But modern science has painted a much more complex and nuanced picture. They were skilled hunters, capable tool makers, and lived in social groups. They cared for their sick and injured, and they even buried their dead, suggesting some form of symbolic thought or ritual. As we learn more about them, the line between us and them becomes increasingly blurred. They were, in many ways, very much like us, facing similar challenges of survival and making sense of their world. Their story is an integral part of the broader human narrative, a chapter that continues to reveal surprising connections. One of the most remarkable discoveries about Neanderthals is that they interbred with our direct ancestors. This was not a rare or isolated event. As modern humans began to migrate out of Africa and spread across the globe, they encountered Neanderthal populations who had been living in Europe and Asia for millennia. Recent genetic studies, some published as recently as 2024, suggest that this interbreeding started around 50,000 years ago, a more recent timeline than previously believed. This means that for thousands of years, these two human groups met, interacted, and produced offspring together, sharing their genes and perhaps aspects of their cultures. The evidence for this interbreeding is written in our DNA. Most people today who live outside of sub-Saharan Africa carry a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA, typically between 1% and 4%. This genetic mixing likely happened in the Middle East shortly after modern humans left Africa, and then these humans carrying Neanderthal genes spread to other parts of the world. Research indicates that this interbreeding wasn't a one-off event, but occurred over an extended period of about 7,000 years. This suggests a long period of coexistence and interaction, where the boundaries between the two groups were permeable, leading to a gradual absorption of Neanderthal genetic material into the expanding modern human population. Neanderthals were far from being simple or unskilled. They possessed advanced technological capabilities for their time. For instance, evidence from Gibraltar shows that as far back as 65,000 years ago, Neanderthals were making tar from plant resin. This involved carefully heating the resin to around 300 degrees Fahrenheit or 150 degrees Celsius to produce a strong adhesive. They used this tar as glue to attach stone points to wooden shafts for spears or to create handles for their tools. This level of pyrotechnology indicates sophisticated planning, an understanding of material properties, and likely collaborative effort in the transmission of complex knowledge across generations. Their ingenuity extended to many aspects of survival. They were skilled hunters of large game, such as mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, and reindeer. which required cooperation and strategic planning. They fashioned effective stone tools using a technique called the Mousterian industry, producing a variety of specialized implements for butchering animals, scraping hides, and working wood. To survive the harsh Ice Age climates of Europe, Neanderthals almost certainly wore clothing. Archaeological evidence such as tools for hide scraping, bone awls for punching holes, and even impressions of twisted fibers suggesting cordage supports the idea that they made protective garments, possibly including parkas, pants, and boots, to shield themselves from the biting cold. The Neanderthals may have vanished as a distinct group, but parts of them live on within many of us. The small percentage of Neanderthal DNA carried by modern humans is not just a curious footnote in our evolutionary history. It has tangible effects on our biology and health today. Some of these genetic inheritances appear to have been beneficial for our ancestors as they adapted to new environments outside Africa. For example, certain Neanderthal genes are associated with increased fertility and a lower risk of miscarriage in modern women. These traits would have provided a significant advantage, contributing to the survival and spread of populations carrying these ancient genes. However, not all inherited Neanderthal genes are beneficial in our modern world. Some of them are linked to an increased susceptibility to certain conditions. For instance, specific Neanderthal gene variants have been associated with a higher risk of allergies, type 2 diabetes, and even increased sensitivity to pain. It's important to remember that these genes evolved in a very different environment and lifestyle. Traits that might have been advantageous for Neanderthals living as hunter-gatherers in Ice Age Europe can have different, sometimes negative, consequences in contemporary societies with different diets, lifestyles, and exposure to pathogens. This highlights the complex interplay between genetics and environment. Further research into our Neanderthal genetic inheritance continues to reveal surprising connections. For example, recent studies have found that parts of the human genome associated with a susceptibility to autism spectrum conditions are enriched with Neanderthal-derived genetic data. One hypothesis suggests this might be due to a genetic bottleneck experienced by Neanderthals before they interbred with modern humans, which could have increased the frequency of certain genetic variants. Another intriguing finding is the absence of Neanderthal Y chromosome DNA in modern humans. This could be due to various reasons, perhaps immune system rejection of male fetuses carrying a Neanderthal Y chromosome by mothers, or simply due to genetic drift over tens of thousands of years. Beyond specific traits, the Neanderthal genetic legacy reminds us of the interconnectedness of human history. The story of their interactions with our ancestors is a story of migration, adaptation, and the mixing of populations. The fact that their genes persist demonstrates that the transition from a world with multiple human species to one dominated by was not a simple case of replacement, but involved a degree of assimilation. Understanding these genetic echoes helps us piece together the complex tapestry of our past and provides insights into human diversity and our ongoing evolution, showing how ancient encounters continue to shape us in subtle ways. The disappearance of the Neanderthals around 40,000 years ago is one of the great mysteries of prehistory. For a long time, it was thought that modern humans with superior intelligence and technology simply outcompeted or even violently exterminated their ancient cousins. However, the picture emerging from recent research is more complex. It seems unlikely that waged a systematic war against Neanderthals. Instead, a combination of factors probably contributed to their decline. Modern humans arriving in Europe in larger numbers and with potentially more sophisticated social networks may have been more efficient at exploiting resources. One significant factor could have been the demographic dynamics. Neanderthal populations appear to have been smaller and more fragmented than those of the incoming. Genetic studies of Neanderthal remains, such as Thorin from Grotte-Mandrin in France, who lived as recently as 42,000 years ago, show signs of inbreeding and genetic isolation. This suggests that some Neanderthal groups were not regularly interbreeding with other Neanderthal populations, let alone modern humans, leading to reduced genetic diversity and potentially lower resilience to environmental changes or competition. Small, isolated populations are always more vulnerable to extinction. The process of Neanderthal disappearance was likely gradual, occurring over thousands of years, as modern human populations expanded. There might have been periods of coexistence, competition, and interbreeding, all playing out differently in various regions. Some areas, like southern Iberia, are considered potential last-stand locations for Neanderthals, where they might have persisted until around 37,000 years ago, even as they vanished from other parts of Europe. Climate change, leading to shifts in vegetation and animal populations, could also have played a role, putting additional pressure on already stressed Neanderthal communities who were adapted to specific environments. Ultimately, Neanderthals did not so much vanish without a trace as become absorbed. While they cease to exist as a distinct species, their genetic legacy endures within billions of modern humans today. This intermingling means that in a very real sense, they are still part of us. Their story is a poignant reminder that human evolution was not a linear progression but a branching bush, with many different human forms coexisting and sometimes interacting. The study of Neanderthals continues to unveil fascinating insights into our own species, our deep past, and the complex journey that made us who we are today, carrying echoes of our ancient cousins within our very cells.